Hey, we're here with Jason Hunter at OSCON 2008 in Portland, Oregon. We have some questions for Jason about big data, how you scale data, and how MarkLogic and MarkMail fit into that whole scheme. So Jason, tell me, how much mail can MarkMail handle? I've heard of terabyte and petabyte data. Can you guys do that?
Well, right now we're at half a terabyte with 17 million mail. That's for every mail that has an attachment. We're storing the attachment. We're storing a PDF version of the attachment, all the images, so the actual XML size is smaller than that. I plan to go much larger than that. I plan to go, I know that there's at least 100 million really good open source messages out there, open source mailing lists. I think we should probably say what MarkMail is. MarkMail is at markmail.org is a website for searching and visualizing open source emails. It's designed to make it easier to find answers, easier to identify trends, easier to see who's expert on things, to decide if something's increasing in popularity, decreasing, stuff like that. And so we've launched it. We have a lot of open source mails in it, presently 16.7 million. It's growing every day. And it's not stressing us out at all right now at that size. We expect it'll go bigger. I know I did a back of the envelope of about 100 million really good open source messages, but even beyond that, there's non-open source messages to load. And so I figure we can get to 1 billion easy.
And you can handle that.
Yeah.
MarkMail can handle 1 billion messages.
Right. We have a customer that has 200 terabytes of XML content. And so if you extrapolate out, I can do that and probably have every public email message that's ever been done that still fits in that size if you encode it as XML.
So Jason, tell us what technologies you use to develop MarkMail.
All right, what tech? Programming languages, we write the site in xQuery, which is W3C standard language. It's the native language of MarkLogic server on which we're built. And it's this XML-aware language. And it works really well for us because all of our messages are XML. We convert email into an XML format. And we use xQuery then to process them. We can search them, manipulate them, render them, and we do all of that in this XML-aware language. It's not just that we use Java to convert messages into the XML. We use Perl to acquire the messages a lot of times. We use JavaScript on the front end to make it the single page, one-page web app experience, so that every time you're taking an action, we don't have to refresh the page. It's all that embedded thing. We have an F5 load balancer that we program in with Tickle. The core server is written in C++. Does HTML count? Probably not.
So it sounds like you've got a really interesting mix of technologies. How do you find the right developers to work on MarkMail?
It can be a challenge to find really talented people. We've taken the approach right now of just hiring the best people we can find. And usually languages aren't that awful to learn if you're a really expert person. And we've got some people who have a lot of experience in these languages or either have picked them up. The Tickle was funny. The guy who did the Tickle, I saw the check and I was like, was that Tickle that I just saw? He's like, yeah. Like, did you ever program Tickle before? No. All right, you just picked it up. So that's good. If you find the right people, you can do that. We're kind of lucky in that we're creating a site, markmail.org, which people who are good programmers kind of use already. And so it's nice when you're doing recruiting that you can say, hey, you understand why this site would be interesting to people like you, and so that makes it a little bit easier. It's better than if you're doing a hospital payroll system. Technologists may not be as excited by it, but people who are already into open source style technologies, we're at OSCON, are the kind of people who are Renaissance programmers, interested in a lot of things, and interested already in what MarkMail is doing, and so it's kind of a perk that you can offer an attractive thing.
So, one of the things I've heard a lot lately is performance. And, with all these different languages and all these different developer-type people working on MarkMail, are you at all concerned as you scale to that 1 billion messages about performance? How are you going to address performance in the future if you get really big and really popular and you have a zillion people using MarkMail? Are you at all concerned about performance?
We better be, if we're going to do it right.
Yeah.
The good part is working at MarkLogic. I've been there 5 years, and I've helped on these sites that make MarkMail look small. So it's not my first time building something that's substantial, and it's kind of what MarkLogic does. Our customers do big fast sites. That's what they're interested in doing. So I'm bringing all that experience in so that we've architected it from the beginning, assuming that scale. And it's that shared nothing architecture where we can just add new hardware to handle new load. The way MarkLogic works, if I have more data, I can add a data management machine. If there's more users, I can add a particular user management evaluation machine. So these clusters can get very large. And as I add more data, I know that I can do what we've done with our customers. And as we add more users, I can do what we've done with our customers. So it'll be a long time before we have more traffic than I'm used to dealing with in some of the customer deployments. It's just kind of fun for it to be one of the ones where MarkLogic is doing it instead of doing it with our customer stuff. So for me, it's exciting because it's the first time I've owned the thing I've worked on.
OSCON 2008. What was your favorite thing about this year's OSCON?
The best thing this year was meeting the people that I've been emailing with, all the project leaders on the various open source projects. As we load their communities, we do a lot of outreach to them, to help them understand what MarkMail does for them, what they could do with it. Instead of just doing scattershot, load as many mailing lists as we can, we try to kind of do all the Perl lists and really work with Perl.org to understand that. We load all the KDE lists and work with them to help them make use of it. And so being here, I've been able to meet a lot of the people that I've been emailing with and putting names and faces together, which is kind of neat. So it's at every conference, it's largely about the people. The talks are great, but then when you see the people, and that experience has been really some of the best.
Excellent. So one last question for you. If you had one book that was very influential and you could say repaid itself 10 times over, what one book would you say?
Should it be an O'Reilly book?
It can be whatever book you want it to be.
It actually is an O'Reilly book, so it's okay. The Steve Suter's High Performance Websites book is my favorite book of the year because what he does is explain how to make a fast site. And as much as we talked about how do you scale, more messages, more users, a lot of the thinking there is how do I get the answer back fast? How do I not overwhelm my servers? And his book talks about how do I make the user experience better by doing things on the page, figuring out how to deal with images, Flash, CSS, JavaScript, all the things that you do on these high-end websites, and try to make it so from the user's perspective, the time from click to action is better. And there's a lot of interesting things in there. In the first book, he's working on the second book, and he's got a blog, and I'm reading it, so I'm kind of anxious. And this is the same guy that did Wiseflow, so you can run Wiseflow against the site, and we actually do. And you say, I need to be able to answer the question fast, but I also need it to look fast from the user's perspective. So we want to always get that answer to you in a tenth of a second, if at all possible. And his book's telling you how to do that, soup to nuts.
Excellent. So one last question, and I know I said one last question 3 times now. This is the last question. If I'm a user, how do I get more information about MarkMail? Just Google it, or what's the best way to get started with MarkMail?
MarkMail's at markmail.org. And
okay.
if you're, let's say you're interested in Perl, then you can go to perl.markmail.org. If you're interested in PHP, you can do php.markmail.org. And that will pre-select just those lists.
Okay.
And then you can search away. Search for your name. Everybody loves to search for their name. See when you've posted, where you've posted, that kind of stuff. And we have a FAQ, and we have a feedback form, so if you want your own list loaded, feel free to type it into the feedback. We prioritize definitely based on what we're hearing from people. So if people are asking for it, we're more likely to load it sooner.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jason.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.